Hello and welcome. In this episode, Unlocking Your Feminine Energy, 5 powerful ways to tap into your inner strength, we're going to cover a lot of areas in which I find many women often overlook and ultimately are not living in their most embodied life. When it comes to feminine energy, there is a lot of misconceptions in regards to what it is, what it isn't. A lot of it is heavily rooted in optics, aesthetics. So a girl in a pretty dress who's pretty slender is what would be perceived as feminine. She wears makeup, she wears perfume. I think of the kind of, I'm just a girl. And that would be the farthest from the truth of an alignment of what the feminine is. The feminine is wildly energetic, very fluid. Think of an ocean. It's beautiful, it's captivating, but an ocean can also be destructive. But it also provides nourishment within its waters. And within those waters, there are so many layers to it. There's so many ecosystems going on in this vastness of the ocean. When you think of the masculine, think of something in a more structured way, very linear, logical, very step by step, like step 1, step 2, step 3. Also kind of in a way, very rigid. When you think of the feminine, you think of something that's a little bit more squishy, things that come to you naturally, things that are felt from within versus having to be something hyperly rigid within a certain outside qualifications or outside means in which something is identified. Historically, when it comes to the feminine, it is something that is very much feared. And with that, people want to be able to control it. And I look at this, an example would be the way that nature is. If nature cannot be contained, nature is then destroyed. It is put into a box. And we do things in order to make it be what we want it to be. And that is where I look at the masculine trying to impart its fullness into the feminine. And even in today, in a corporate setting, one has to be one that is super linear, meaning that you have to be able to do things repetitively and produce the same, or if not better, outcomes each and every time. When the feminine, that is not how we operate. If we are operating in a sense of embodiment, operating as we were designed, then there is such movements, there is such differencing that comes with being in the feminine. However, our society very much values the masculine and does not value the feminine. We can look into financials of what is considered manly work versus womanly work. Think of things in the home. Housemaker, she is not compensated for her efforts. Childbearing is not compensated. Cooking and cleaning and nurturing, all those things are very much necessary, important, vital skill sets, but these are not things that are hailed as important, valuable, life-changing things, yet they actually are very much the sustaining of life. And unfortunately, our society conditions young girls who become teenagers, who then become young women and become middle-aged women and older women. And the stories that have been deeply ingrained and embedded in them is that I must hide, suppress anything that makes me inherently female. Anything that would be strikingly within the feminine, I must hide it because it is not valued. It is not important, and it potentially can be weaponized against me and being able to limit my abilities to progress in life. Now, you may say that hasn't been your experience, and that's wonderful. And I would love to hear feedback as to what your life experience is. However, for many, this ingraining has been done so covertly, so covertly, based on their systems that are here, the powers that be, if you will. It is done so covertly that you don't know. It is very innocuous, and it's done by design. It's essentially to suppress your knowing, your intuition. It's essentially taking off any sort of alerts, notifications. It's like notifications off. And then you will operate in a way that is essentially, I like to call it a faux man, a penisless man, essentially, is what society wants women to operate out of. Unfortunately, what this does as women become from young womanhood to middle age into older, I find that a lot of the struggles, a lot of the pains that women are facing are due to the fact that they are not embodied, they are not aligned, and they are out of touch with themselves. Be it that they've never been in touch with themselves. Maybe there's been such observations in life that being a woman is negative. If you've been have any sort of trauma, abuse that has occurred, or even if you've just witnessed it, even if it's not you directly or friends or whatnot, but just the collective, that in itself would essentially make you be disgusted, be scared to show up in a feminine presenting way. And the only time that I do see what air quotes the feminine could be is the optics. You need to be hot, you need to be sexy, you need to be snatched, you need to have nice big succulent breasts, you need to have either very narrow hips or some voluptuous hips, depending on what cultural background you're in. Your hair needs to be long. You need to wear makeup, but not too much makeup. You need to wear perfume, but not too strong of perfume. You need to wear clothes that are feminine and fitted, but not too tight, because then you could potentially be coded as a air quote slut. All these things, again, the things that are strikingly feminine are the things that you are either suppressed, scared to embody, or you weaponize to embody it for the privileges because of how society is. Now, there is a notion or need for both. We all need balance. Right now, we're going through a solar eclipse, which was in Libra. Libra being the sign of balance, the scales. And so there is, to me, a high need for the balance of our yin and yang, because that is what's going to make our lives harmonious. That is how we tap into our power. So if you have an idea, creative idea, look at that as your feminine. The vehicle, the structures, the processes, the getting it in motion is very much the masculine. It is making the process there. Another example would be thinking of a house. As they say, a wife or a woman makes the home. That is, to me, a great example of the balancing of both the yin and the yang, the masculine and the feminine. The home, the house, is the structure. That is your masculine. And then with that, providing the structure allows the feminine to actually be able to be, in a way, contained. But then there's the fluidity that flows through over the house. And now this house is no longer just a structure, a cold, sterile structure. It is now a home that has warmth and life and texture and delightful smells, delightful meals, and nourishment, love, enrichment, nourishment, healing. Now, ways in which you can take these points and begin to flourish within your inner strength. I always like to state out the gate that in order for you to own your power, you have to really truly understand yourself, what's important, what is your expression, and also understanding, are you operating out of yourself or are you operating out of someone else? Someone else. And by someone, it could be the collective, it could be from your family, your friends, the collectives that you're embodied with. Are you moving from a place of refinement and ownership and sovereignty over your life. And if you are not, that is your first step out the gate, is really collectively reviewing your life and ensuring that you're moving from a place that makes you satisfied. I will share an example of while I was in my younger years in corporate, due to just the aesthetics of what I am working and the expectations and the desires to go further, go up the ladder, break the glass ceiling. There is a notion that as a woman, I could not look like a woman. And if there's any cultural areas of you, you have to essentially bleach those in order for you to be received. And so I worked very tirelessly to remove anything that showed any other than what would be deemed acceptable. So that's dressing of a certain way, dressing very dry, very matronly, which is not my aura. I'm a very, if you think of a color, I would consider myself the essence of pink. Very fun, very flirty. Yet in corporate, you're not able to show that, because if you do, you may be perceived as someone who's not to be respected, someone who is not intelligent, because balance of intelligence and aesthetics, beauty, aren't something that are respected. And it took me a very long time to find out that I was operating not of my own, but of other. And I saw how much it drained me, how it blocked my natural knowing, my intuition, and even worse, my creativity. Wanting to pander and be what others would accept of me blocked me. And it took a number of years to be able to remove all the tetherings of that outside view in order for me to shine beautifully, and even to be able to start this channel, because I thought I had to be a certain way in order to be respected and to be successful. But I own fully that my abilities to generate wealth and abundance is by being in my full embodiment of the feminine. Another way in which you can take your inner strength and maximize it with your femininity is ensuring that you do self-care. The word self-care has become very, very trendy. And self-care is not sheet mask. It is not going to the spa. It is not the things that we put to, say, capitalism. Self-care truly is self-preservation. And to preserve yourself, one must work on doing the inner work. So journaling, meditation. This also does mean taking care of your aesthetics, your optics. So making sure that your body is well cared for. So that's showering every day, doing your skincare, doing your hair, taking care of the things that make you feel great in your home, which is your body. Oftentimes, people from just different pathways will neglect their bodies in thought that this is being more highly respectable. And so they will not nourish their bodies with sleep, water, good healthy foods that are dialed for their bodies. Overworking out, just overdoing it. And this is, to me, the masculine. That is that hyper, like, linear means, like repetitive. I come in, I show up, and I do a thing every day, every single day in the same way. But women, especially from younger women into their menopausal, have a lovely thing called a menstrual cycle. Think of it like the moon. It's lunar. It cycles. It's not a linear path. And so by being able to respect that and owning that, hey, I'm getting close to my monthly, which is when I tap into even more sensitivity to my inner knowing, taking time to be quiet, taking time to sleep, because that is when you are able to connect with the divine and be able to receive and be receptive of the messages and the insights that you need in order to flourish in your life. So you must take that. So that'll be number 2, which is self-care. Number 3 would be mindfulness. We're often tethered to our phones, always focusing on that next dopamine hit. be it from Instagram, TikTok, or any your friend circles. All those things can hijack your mind, and often women find themselves feeling extremely anxious often, and it's because we have been mentally hijacked. So by being able to sit with yourself, practice meditation, deep breathing, yoga, taking a nature walk, all those ways will help you to be present in your body in the right now. And by being able to really be attuned to your body's needs and what is requesting of you, your body sends you notifications. Those notifications are not loud. That'll be, I would say, a nice quiet gym. When you hear something in you and it's extremely loud, that can let you know that that is not of you. That is of something outside of you. However, when it's inside of you, it is softer. And as I'm speaking this, I am getting a vision of the reasons why you are going to hear it softer when it's within, because if you are actually within you, there's not a need to yell. However, when it's not of you, if it's outside of you, it has to be loud in order for you to hear. So taking mindful practices will help you to tap into your inner femininity and your power. Next will be building relationships. In our lives, relationships have become very transactional. It's tit for tat. Is what is it in for me versus the nourishing of relationships, be it friends, families, lovers. Having a great supportive environment is very vital for you to be in the feminine. When you do not feel safe, you do not feel psychologically safe, you are not able to bloom at your fullest capacity. And so it is extremely important to make sure the people who have access to you are nourishing to you as you are nourishing to them. It should be a beautiful, fluid, orchestrated flow. The next thing I want to tap into is understanding the importance of your intuition and emotional intelligence as a feminine being. This will be your fifth point of how you tap into your inner femininity and your power. Intuition is a knowing, and it manifests in your everyday decisions. Oftentimes, we are so busy and there's the noise that comes from outside. We're not able to know what's going on. It could be that feeling about this guy that you don't feel great about. But if you are super busy, if you are operating more in the masculine, which is to push and to make something be versus allowing, which is more in your feminine, you silence those intuitions and that inner knowing. And our inner knowing is not going to be loud, nor is it pushy. So being able to understand that is important. When I think of your emotional intelligence and how that balances with your intuition, emotional intelligence areas can cover your self-awareness, empathy, social skills. These are the areas in being aware of yourself, aware of what you're feeling, being able to give balanced compassion. And I want to take a second about what I mean by balanced compassion. There's often when we hear of people, someone suffering. I think there is a hurricane that just went through the United States, and it was very horrific. There will be individuals who will want to donate and give, but they feel like they're those poor people. That to me is imbalanced, because it's someone lower than you versus seeing everyone as a reflection of yourself, because you are the divine. The divine is you, and everything else is the divine, which means it's nothing more than a reflection, another sphere of reflection of yourself. So giving a balanced compassion, so being able to see everything on the same alignment as you, is where you want to be. And often that starts with being able to give compassion and empathy to yourself. And then just how you are socially able to connect with people is important. Now, I want to leave you with just a few other ideas and thoughts in which you can have some practical means in tapping into your femininity and your inner strength and power. As a feminine being, embracing your feminine energy is going to lead you down a beautiful, sometimes chaotic, self-discovery journey and development. You will have to rid yourself of things that no longer serve you, and often there are things that actually never served you, but were used as a safety mechanism due to the society that we live in. You give yourself empathy like warm honey, and you release it, you thank it for what it did and what it does, and you let it go. And you really cultivate what it is that you want for yourself. Who do you want to be for you? How do you want to look? What makes you excited? What gives you chills of passion and just juiciness? Is it the way you wear your hair? Maybe you've always wanted to go a different color. Maybe you've wanted to cut it. Maybe you've wanted to dress a certain way, but out of fear and the desire to stay within certain circles, you've kind of cut off your own self in order to be able to be within this certain community. These are the things that you have to do in order to develop yourself, which means being able to show up extremely bright and extremely full in your femininity. Where this leads you is to a deep, rich cultivation of fulfillment. This is where you'll be able to integrate and really truly operate out of the embodiment of your feminine energy, and be able to not only see for yourself, but also see the world in a greater way because your lens is clear. Think of it this way. When you are looking at a mirror, let's say you're looking in your compact, in your purse. It's a little dirty, but you can see yourself okay. Now think about it if you were to take a moment and clean the compact you're using at this moment. You are able to see a much more richer vibrancy of your image, which is you, versus in how you saw yourself in a mirror that was a little dirty, needed to be cleaned. That is how you will begin to feel as you take in the fullness of your embodiment. If this episode was exciting, please leave it a rating, leave some comments. This is a new podcast, and I would greatly appreciate commentary and feedback because I want to be able to tailor this channel to your needs. Until next time, I hope that you learn and express your higher self and the feminine.